Hello, America, and hello, nuclear aficionados around the world. Welcome to Nuclear.com Daily. This is Monday, December 23rd, 2013. It's a pleasure and an honor to be part of your day. I'm Steve Schulin of Nuclear.com. And those of you listening in later via podcast or YouTube, please know that you're welcome, wanted, and encouraged to come join in live every Monday through Friday, starting at 12:05 p.m. Eastern Time. You can join in just like a conference call. The number is 724-444-7444, and you'll be asked for a call ID. That is 95348#. Come one, come all of goodwill to Nuclear.com Daily. Let us reason together. There's an awful lot of important matters in the world that relate to things nuclear, energy, environment, nuclear weapons, national security, foreign policy. Some very interesting stuff going on in nuclear physics world as well. Anyway, it's my goal to have folks from every nuclear facility in the world coming and joining in on a real town hall style basis, on a regular basis. So, hey, let your colleagues know that you're welcome, wanted, and encouraged to join in. This is not meant to be a monologue. But let's go to the news. Being a Monday edition, I've got an extra thick stack of stuff from front pages here over the last 3 days since our Friday show. I'd like to start off with a story out of Virginia, the Daily Press, and it talks about radiation shielding, a special attempt to shield neutrons from scientific equipment. The Jefferson Lab have developed new concrete shielding to help protect equipment at one of the lab's experimental buildings. And very interesting story. You can see the full article at dailypress.com. And the article title is Jefferson Lab Engineers in Newport News Design New Radiation Shielding. They have a video for it. The writer is Tamara Dietrich of the Daily Press staff. And that was on the front page on Saturday. Now, the main culprit is the neutron, the subatomic particle that lab scientists typically probe using the continuous electron beam accelerator facility. In a typical experiment, the accelerator directs a stream of electrons into the nuclei of atoms in a target material, scattering protons, neutrons, electrons, and other particles away from the probe like billiard balls, one researcher says, but on a nuclear scale. And the problem is a single event from a neutron can corrupt software, and that means we have to shut down and restart. And if a reboot is needed, it could take about an hour. And running the accelerator, if you want to rent the accelerator in that hall, it costs more than $50,000. So an hour of downtime is expensive. Moving on to Department of Energy sites. Top story Saturday in the Knoxville News Sentinel is by our friend Frank Munger, there at Knoxville News. Y-12 contractor gets low score. Babcock and Wilcox receives 58% of the possible fee. Interesting stuff. Another DOE site, Savannah River, makes the top story of a South Carolina newspaper on Sunday. Canadian nuclear waste heading to South Carolina is their headline. see the full story at Greenville Online, GREENVILLE online.com. And the article on the web is titled Canadian Nuclear Waste Heading for SC by South Carolina staff writer. And the comments section there on the website includes a comment from activist Tom Clements, who I think he's quoted in the article as well. And we've been covering this. And this has been making front pages, not just here in Greenville, but also I think in the Aiken paper over recent weeks. And I'm glad to see Tom Clements commenting on these articles. And here he answers a question that I posed. I was questioning his conclusion that the only reason Savannah River and the state of South Carolina are interested has nothing to do with the stated non-proliferation goals, that it's only the money. And he delves into that more in depth in his comment. It's just a short paragraph. Let me read it. He says, "There is absolutely no need for this material to be dumped at the Savannah River site. Canadian officials with AECL had said that the material could be solidified in Canada, which is what's happening with similar waste. Also, the liquid waste could be denatured to make it below weapon grade quality, but DOE has refused to analyze that option and won't prepare an environmental impact statement looking at disposal in Canada. The driver on the SRS end is clearly the $60 million payment that has been reported, money to keep the aging H Canyon reprocessing plant operating, which costs about $150 million a year, so the budget is under growing stress." So that's some background on why Mr. Clements thinks it's all about money and not about non-proliferation. All right, Fukushima related stories plus a reprocessing story Saturday in the Japan Times. Let's see here. We got three of them. One little top teaser, cultural barrier, talking about safety culture being the emphasis. The new emphasis there at TEPCO. A short story, Japan meets 10 million a year tourist target. Talks a little bit about the impact of Fukushima and radiation on people coming to visit. And the most interesting, nuclear news. Although safety culture is interesting, the other ones were interesting. But on reprocessing, the work on Rokkasho fuel reprocessing plant to be completed by October. It's a Kyoto story. Japan Nuclear Fuel Limited said Thursday it expects its spent fuel reprocessing plant in Rokkasho Village, which is in Aomori Prefecture, to pass the state's safety assessment and be ready for operation in October 2014. The plan was explained to local governments concerned as the operator is seeking to apply for the Nuclear Regulation Authority's safety screening of its experimental reprocessing plant, possibly later this month. A Japan nuclear fuel official said October 2014 will mark the plant's completion, and its actual operation will start after securing local consent. The plant is tasked with playing a key role in Japan's fuel recycling policy, which aims to reprocess spent uranium and reuse the extracted plutonium and uranium as reactor fuel. But whether the schedule will be realized largely depends on the progress of the safety screening process. Japan has revamped safety requirements for commercial nuclear reactors and facilities handling nuclear fuel since the 2011 Fukushima disaster, which proved past regulations to be ineffective. Under the new standards, spent fuel reprocessing facilities are required to take measures to deal with severe accidents, such as criticality incidents and hydrogen explosions. They are also required to enhance protection against earthquakes and other natural disasters. Japan Nuclear Fuel, the company, said costs to install additional steps to counter severe accidents and earthquakes will reach 30 billion yen. The company started building the plant in 1993, and a trial operation began in March 2006, but its completion has been repeatedly postponed. Moving on to nuclear power news in the United States. On Saturday, the lead story in a local paper there by Vermont Yankee, violation at Yankee committed by a guard. And you can see the full story, not at the Rutland Herald website, which is a subscription-only site, but at a sister paper, the Times Argus, TimesArgus.com. It's the same article with the author, the staff writer Susan Small here is the writer, and you can see the title they have there at the Times Argus: Yankee security violation committed by guard. Of course, they don't know what it was because it's security related, and details on that do not get released out of concern that folks who are looking to evade the security at nuclear plants would use that information that they would learn from the operating experience. Top story in the Omaha World Herald Sunday edition was about Fort Calhoun and an investigation into the price tag. You know, the plant has restarted, and they're looking into the $181 million that was spent while the plant was shut down. And they said that overtime was a big part of Fort Calhoun's repair bill, and they do have the full edition there on the website. You can find that at www.omaha.com, and it's by Cody Winchester, World Herald staff writer. And the title of the article is "Millions of Dollars in Overtime Costs Are a Big Part of Fort Calhoun's Repair Bill." Another nuclear power related story, but its main focus is on coal, was on the front page of the West Virginian Times, or the Times West Virginian, out of Fairmont, West Virginia. And it's titled, let me get it there, "Emerging Markets May Help Steam Coal." And it's talking about, for example, Japan has abandoned its nuclear reactors. You can see the full text of the story, not there where it made the front page that I saw, but at the original paper. The article originally appeared in the Beckley, West Virginia newspaper called the Register Herald, and here's the title there on their website by Pamela Pritt. "Coal's future may not be so bleak after all, but it will be foreign, not domestic markets that ignite the growth." And that's at www.register-herald.com. Let's see, another nuclear plant news that caught my eye. It wasn't on the front page of anything that I saw. This was out of the Boston Globe. I saw it on their website last night. Changing energy landscape may save Plymouth nuclear plant. And it's by Globe staff writer, and you can find this at bostonglobe.com in the business section. Just search for Plymouth nuclear. Dateline: Plymouth, perched on the eastern shore of this seaside community, Plymouth, the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station is a sprawling complex of sand-colored buildings completed during Richard Nixon's first term. Above its main entrance, a sign proclaims, "Pilgrim, our plant, our performance, our future." This may seem a bold statement for one of the nation's oldest nuclear plants. Over the past year, Pilgrim has struggled with unplanned outages, attracted increased scrutiny from federal regulators, and come under the same economic pressures that are shuttering nuclear plants across the country, including Vermont Yankee in Vernon, Vermont. But analysts, regulators, and power industry officials, including Pilgrim's owners, say the facility is likely to escape the fate of Vermont Yankee and other aging nuclear plants and keep operating for years to come. Ironically, Pilgrim is benefiting from the competitive forces driving so many other nuclear plants out of business, namely cheap natural gas. New England's increasing reliance on natural gas for both heating and electricity has left Pilgrim as one of the few alternatives to keep generating power should, for example, supply disruptions knock out gas-powered plants. Pilgrim already has filled that role during peak demand periods that have led to natural gas shortages because of the region's insufficient pipeline capacity, according to ISO New England, the regional power grid operator. And that role will become more important in the next few years as expected coal and nuclear plant retirements strip the power system of nearly 4,000 megawatts of generation, which is about an eighth of its current capacity by the summer of 2017. So, let's see, 4,000 megawatts, that's like 4 big nuclear plants. And that's about 1/8 of its current capacity. So 8 times 4,000 megawatts is 32,000 big 1,000 megawatt plant types for all of New England. And they say by the summer of 2017, there may be a shortfall of electricity because of retirements of coal and nuclear plants, and they don't have the pipeline capacity to replace it right now with natural gas. Anyway, so the whole story is available there on bostonglobe.com. They say Entergy, which is the owner of the plant, Entergy's faith in the viability of Pilgrim is evident at the 41-year-old plant. After winning a 20-year extension of Pilgrim's license in 2012, Entergy has invested heavily to upgrade the facility. Among the biggest projects, estimated at tens of millions of dollars, is the construction of an area that will hold 360,000-pound casks of concrete and steel to store spent radioactive fuel rods. Of course, that's, even though it is cash outlay, it's the federal government breach of contract that has caused the need for this, and the utility is certain, based on previous damage lawsuits filed by, I imagine Entergy has filed some at some of their other plants, as well as other utilities. Every one of those casks and ISFSI, Independent Spent Fuel Storage Installation, costs have been upheld as damages that the federal government must pay. So I don't think that's a sign of great confidence in Pilgrim compared to other places. It's just if Pilgrim can run a couple extra years, it's building the ISFSI is no cost to the utility. In fact, well, I don't know if it would save money. There is no incentive to do it that I know of. All right, finally, one more nuclear power story. China, the China Daily, their top story, tech bans to be relaxed. And the article mentions greater use of nuclear, wind, and solar in China that will be enhanced by greater U.S. cooperation. Oh, the most prominent nuclear story in papers, especially around the U.S., on Sunday and again today, was an Associated Press story by Robert Burns, their Associated Press's national security writer. And let's see, one example is a paper out of Wisconsin, the Gazette, which had their lead story, U.S. nuke forces in great distress. Their subhead, doubts emerge on its role in U.S. plans. We're talking about the role of the ICBMs, the land-based ICBMs in silos. None of the other stories that I saw had that subhead emphasis in it. Let's see, some of the other headlines that were used. The Lewiston, Maine newspaper, the Sun Journal, had it on its front page, and it titled its story, "Officer Says Rot in U.S. Nuclear Force." With Obama and others calling for alternatives, the program's days may be numbered. Well, I guess that's a similar subhead to doubts emerge on its role in U.S. plans. Minnesota paper, the Mankato Free Press, had a little teaser on its front page. Nuclear missiles, a force in distress. The Rocky Mount Telegram out of North Carolina had a little highlight on their front page. Hundreds of nuclear missiles that have stood war-ready in underground silos across America are a force in distress, if not in decline, according to the Pentagon. Great Falls Tribune in Montana carried it on their front page. The Star News. Let's see, where is that from? I'm not sure which state that's from. North Carolina. I think it's North Carolina, but I forget. And I can't really tell from the front page. They had it as their lead story. Nuclear force is under fire. Aging weapons are only part of the problem. And then they have a short sidebar right there on the front page. The U.S. nuclear arsenal, the current ICBM known as the Minuteman III, has been in service since 1970. The Air Force operates 450 and has suggested cutting to 400. ICBMs are one leg of a strategic triad of nuclear weapons delivered by long-range bombers, submarines hidden at sea, and land-based missiles. Also, the lead story in the Union Sun and Journal out of Lockport, New York. They titled it, "Worry Over ICBMs. Report Says U.S. Nuclear Missiles Are a Force in Much Distress." Same theme echoed in the Niagara Gazette out of New York, Niagara Falls. Worry over ICBMs. U.S. nuclear missiles are a force in much distress. Out of Texas, the Bryan College Station newspaper, the Eagle, had a highlight on the front page. They say U.S. nuclear missiles are slowly going extinct. Nuclear worries, the number of ICBM missiles is dwindling, but missteps and leadership lapses have raised questions about how they're being managed. That's from a newspaper called the Indiana Gazette out of Pennsylvania, Indiana, Pennsylvania. And you can find the full text of the AP story at a lot of places. Search for U.S. nuclear missiles are a force in much distress. I pulled it down from the Washington Post's AP, or the Washington Post archive, which includes AP stories. So those were the papers yesterday. Like I say, that was the single biggest topic. On Saturday, the Stars and Stripes had another nuclear weapons related story on their front page, the military newspaper. Let's see, the nuke general accused of drunkenness and fraternizing. This was a fellow who was fired. He was commander, Major General Michael Carey. He was commander of the Air Force's arsenal of land-based ICBMs. And he drank too much and behaved like a boor last summer during an official trip to Moscow, where he insulted his Russian hosts and hung out with two suspicious women he met at a hotel bar, according to an investigative report released Thursday. The Air Force Inspector General. A more laudatory story, as if any story could be less laudatory, is out of a Pennsylvania paper, the news item, town of Shamokin, and it celebrates a native son of that town, the highest ranking officer in the United States Air Force, General C. Robert Kaler. He is retired. Now, he formerly had that command of the nuclear missile forces. Anyway, you can see the full story at newsitem.com. And the general was Kaler, K-E-H-L-E-R. Pakistan's plutonium reactor made the front page of a paper out of New Delhi, India, called the Asian Age. See the little item there on the front. Fourth Pakistan N reactor is the headline. Nearly complete. Yeah, we covered this last week. Let's see, what's the name of it? The Khushab, K-H-U-S-H-A-B complex, and you can see the full story. That's a Press Trust of India story, which essentially says the same stuff we said last week. And you can find that at pakistantoday.com. A couple of stories on, the NSA spying scandal that's really having worldwide impetus. On Sunday, there was a story in the Jerusalem Post saying Jerusalem reacts mildly to reports of U.S. spying. And it mentions nuclear in the story. Not only was the NSA monitoring email traffic of prime ministers of Israel, Olmert, Barak, but they were also spying on the Hebrew University Institute of Physics, which does work on nuclear physics. Well, anyway, part of the reason why Israel was reacting mildly was hinted at here in Haaretz, the English language version of Haaretz out of Jerusalem. And it's their lead story. It says, let's see here. Scoop, Israel spied on foreign leaders too. So maybe that's why Israel wasn't putting up such a stink about it. They have a photo of Jonathan Pollard, the traitor to the United States, who has not been released. But Israel, he was spying for Israel. He was a U.S. citizen, high security clearance, and he was passing information on to Israel. I've got to tell you, Israel is considered an ally, but Israel had no qualms in killing killing our sailors on the Liberty, the USS Liberty in the Gulf. That was many years ago during a wartime action. We were seeking information, intelligence, electronic intelligence, and that's what the Liberty was an information gathering ship. And I think the evidence is clear that Israel knew exactly who that ship was, that it was our intelligence gathering ship, and they didn't want anybody else to have eyes and ears out that could possibly benefit their enemy. And they sunk it. Intentionally sunk it. So I urge Israel to be circumspect in their mock outrage over U.S. spying. All right, a really interesting story in a paper out of Massachusetts, the Sun Chronicle, and it's titled "The Top 10 Stories of 2013, Shining a Light on a Dark Moment in TI's History." They're talking about Texas Instruments, who bought a plant that was used back during the Cold War era as part of the American nuclear weapons project. And many of the workers at that plant are now participating in the Energy Employees Occupational Illness Compensation Program, the EEOICP. Anyway, you can see the full story at the Sun Chronicle website out of Attleboro, Massachusetts. And their website is thesunchronicle.com. And let's see, Iran, several stories about Iran. Nuclear talks progress slowly, says Iran. That was highlighted today in the Kuwaiti newspaper, the Arab Times. They linked to an Agence France press story. Wall Street Journal today also highlights the same thing over in their, this is the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Sorry about that. I was looking at that column over on the left, which looks similar to the Wall Street Journal's column in the middle. Mohammad Javad Zarif, Iran's foreign minister, said talks in Geneva over the country's nuclear program are slowly moving forward, but urged world powers to, quote, avoid addressing issues that could be troublemaking. If you want us to take your $25 billion in exchange for a promise, then you better not cause any trouble by discussing details. Last night I saw a feature in the Jerusalem Post. I don't know if it showed up in today's paper or not, but I didn't see it anywhere else. Senate prepares major vote on Iran sanctions next month. They report by Michael Wilner, Jerusalem Post correspondent, Dateline out of Washington. White House braces for a decision that will be increasingly difficult to avoid as bill authors seek broad support. It's called the Nuclear Weapon Free Iran Act of 2013. And you can find that story at jpost.com, the Jerusalem Post website. On Saturday, the Lebanese newspaper, the Daily Star, has a big story at the bottom. Obama says, no need to look tough on Iran through new sanctions. And let's see, finally, that piece about weapons to warheads to plowshares, or swords to plowshares when it comes to nuclear. On December 17th, the story appeared in the Richmond Times-Dispatch about Dominion Power and how many warheads they had, their fuel had accounted for by purchasing downblended, highly enriched uranium from Russia. And that story is still being republished. On Saturday, it made the News Virginian newspaper front page out of Waynesboro, Virginia. I guess they're part of the customer area there for North Anna nuclear plant. Well, that was a thick stack of stuff. I didn't think I was going to be able to get through it in time to highlight one of my favorite internet newsletters, and that is Science and Environmental Policy Project, www.cep.org. Fred Singer is the inspiration and driving force behind that, and Ken Hapola edits this most excellent weekly thing. It's a lot of freaking pages. Very interesting, useful information. I urge you to find 30 minutes a week. Subscribe to their email and read through it. Tremendous insights into the shoddy science behind the CO2 alarmism that our nuclear industry, the big players appear to be jumping on that bandwagon of shoddy science. And we're not doing the world any favors. And I don't think we're doing our own industry any favors either, at least in the long term. Because the more you empower these fraudsters and faith-based assumers, the worse it's going to be for the entire world, and even us. The great work that Fred Singer, Ken Hapola is doing. They ask you to help support them in their efforts, and I do urge you to send them what you can afford. They're doing a very valuable service. Make your check payable to SEP, S-E-P-P, and send it to SEP at 1600 South Eads Street, E-A-D-S Street, Suite 712-S, Arlington, Virginia, 22202. Let's see, let me show the address here. That's SEP, 1600 South Eads Street, Suite 712S, Arlington, Virginia, 22202. Oh, they have the extra zip code numbers, -2907. You could also donate online by going to www.sepp.org and hit the donate button. Oh, they reprinted three full stories this week, including one talking about faith within science from Thomas P. Sheehan. Now Sheehan, he puts a very good perspective on the total intellectual dishonesty of the folks who say the science is settled. Dr. Sheehan got his BS and PhD degrees in physics from MIT. He is now the director of the Institute for Theological Encounter with Science and Technology, based in St. Louis. Very interesting stuff. Another article from Charles Batig. Let's see, Batig. Dr. Batig is a retired electrical engineer and physician. In the 60s, he served as a principal scientist in biomedical monitoring systems at North American Aviation Los Angeles in support of the Apollo moon mission. Later, he served in the U.S. Public Health Service at NIH in Bethesda, Maryland, in the biomedical engineering branch. Then he taught anesthesiology at UCLA and Mount Sinai in New York. And then he became a private practice doctor of anesthesiology. And then he retired, and now he's applying his intellect to some interesting stuff. And he talks about how appropriate it is, this hit movie that they call Hunger Games, and he relates it to what he calls climate games. And finally, they reprint a December 19th editorial from the Wall Street Journal about John Beale of the Environmental Protection Agency. I'll tell you what, this story is incredible. This was a really high-level EPA employee, but I mean, and how high level you can see from like a memo from the current administrator of the EPA, the top EPA appointee, Gina McCarthy. She had written this really laudatory memo about how Beale was going to be helping her on special projects, and he'd already had great impact on EPA policy in the past. Well, anyway, this guy was a psycho, a liar of incredible proportions. He wouldn't show up to work, and he told people it was because he was actually working for the CIA. He was a secret agent, and that his EPA job was like a cover. Anyway, this is one of the architects of America's climate policy, a convicted fraud perpetrator. May God help us. Anyway, I love what SEP's doing. Please help him out as you can. I haven't decided whether to come in on Christmas Day and do a December 25th story or not. You know, my family's going to be together here, my two children. My one son is driving down today from Maryland. Please keep him in your prayers, as I do you and your families. I hope you have a blessed Christmas, and that you keep the Christmas spirit in your heart every day of the year. Thanks. See you later. Those of you in the nuclear biz, make it another safe one, my friends. This is Steve Schulin signing off for Nuclear.com Daily.